elements that go into making a Gerry Anderson series, and when it comes to the main characters, you've got to have the best. Whatever the setting, you'll always find brave, dashing heroes willing to put their lives on the line to do what's right. But sometimes in order to make those heroes more heroic, you have to have somebody by their side who's not quite on the same level. Sometimes that can be a guest character brought in for one episode only to act the fool or say silly things.
I say, open this door at once. We're British.
Sometimes it can be a regular character who's usually pretty sensible, but then suddenly acts like they've had a lobotomy in order to serve the needs of the plot.
Do you ever have feelings about people you're close to? Like when your wife is sick, and you're not with her, but you just know it.
Ah, you're in love.
Fredo.
And then there's the third kind of idiot character. The regular character who really is that stupid and useless all the time, but has somehow risen to a position of power despite being barely able to get themselves dressed in the morning.
My being head of security is a joke.
And so in what I'm hoping will become a semi-regular feature of BIGRAT Bytes, we're going to spotlight one of these failure characters in a very special award ceremony, the Moron of the Month. And for our very first Moron of the Month, let's start with the most obvious choice, Captain Excuse me. Yeah? Oh, I'm being told we can now cross live to Space City, where a very serious situation is developing.
Space City, come in emergency.
Fireball XL5 emergency, out of control.
Yes, there's a problem aboard Fireball XL5, namely that this man is its captain. This is Ross, first name or last name, I don't know, and he is easily the most useless character to ever appear on this show, which given the collective brain power of the residents of Space City is no mean feat.
What's the matter? Fireball XL7 emergency, Steve.
Ross, however, more than deserves to be our very first Moron of the Month. Sporting an unnaturally swollen head and wearing the permanently haunted expression of a man who once saw his grandparents having sex, Ross is first introduced in the episode Space Magnet, and is currently having problems because XL7 is being drawn off course towards the magnetic planet Magneton. When the XL5 crew arrives to rescue Ross, they find that XL7 has already been dismantled by the invisible beings that live there, so, you know, it didn't take long for Ross to completely lose control of the situation.
Well, if that's the only way in, that's the way for us, too.
Ross and his co-pilot Chuck resolve to extricate themselves from this dilemma by just standing around looking perturbed, and when that failed, they were pretty much out of ideas until Steve and company turned up.
Professor Maddock. Ross. It is Ross, isn't it?
You're so useless I'd forgotten who you were! We next see Ross just 2 episodes later in Plant Man from Space. You've gotta love those titles. With the Earth under imminent threat of destruction from a space missile and XL5 temporarily out of service, XL1 is rolled into action. And who do we find at the controls?
Ross is at the controls. He's very experienced. He'll get us through if anyone can.
Well, Steve, given what we've seen before, that sounds a tad optimistic, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, sure, the last time he lost XL7, but there were extenuating circumstances. This time, we're seeing Ross in his element. This is what he's trained for. This is what he knows. And as soon as he gets XL1 off the launch ramp, he's going to...
You broke the ship. You broke the bloody ship.
Ross to Space City. Sorry about the slip, but the new ejection equipment works fine.
Oh, well, I'm sure that's a great comfort to the huddled masses who are currently living in fear for their lives. I blew up another ship, but at least I'm okay. Realising that if things carry on this way, Ross will have destroyed the entire XL fleet by, Thursday, Commander Zero forbids him to fly anything ever again. I'm just kidding, he gives him another ship. This brings us to Ross's third and final appearance in the episode Space Immigrants, which if you read your Space Daily Mail, you'll know are responsible for all space problems.
I'm not political.
But in this case, however, it's humanity who are the immigrants. An expedition is preparing to colonise the planet of New Earth, and Ross has been sent on ahead to do a preliminary survey.
According to Ross's reports, it's a great planet.
Actually, I take back what I said about Commander Zero, as this is clearly a cunning scheme to dispose of someone who is an obvious danger to themselves and others. We soon learn that upon arriving on New Earth, the very experienced Ross was instantly incapacitated by the lower oxygen levels in the air and overpowered by 2 Lillispatians, who are all of 6 inches tall.
If any of my men in the Wasps had given in to the enemy as easily as you did, I'd have thrown him out of the service.
I also like that Ross is still wearing his XL7 shirt even though the ship is now a pile of scrap metal. Did they just not tell him? I mean, imagine wearing a shirt for a spaceship that doesn't exist. That's pretty silly. Luckily, and I use the term sarcastically, Ross is saved when it turns out the Lillispatians are scared of Lazoons.
Howdy, Flo.
And when you have to be saved by Zuni, you know you really are too stupid to live. So what happens to Ross at the end of this episode?
Ross is on his way back in Mayflower 3 with our prisoners to pick up fresh supplies.
Yes, that's right. He's been left in charge of the two prisoners who overpowered him with ease, with no backup or assistance in case they get up to any further mischief, which they almost certainly would do considering Zuni isn't now there to scare the living daylights out of them. And guess what? We never see Ross again after this episode, so I'm assuming that's exactly what happened. He could be dead for all we know. So please, a moment of silence now for the passing of a truly great spaceman. Anyway, to close out this episode, I'd just like to ask the question, could Ross have chosen a more embarrassing way to go? I mean, in the whole Gerry Anderson universe, is there possibly a more humiliating or embarrassing way to die?
Help! I'm drowning in tears!
Thank you, Torchy. Thank you.